Welcome to What's Up Wichita. We're here with host Mayor Brandon Whipple. This month, the mayor is joined by Kendall Seal with the American Civil Liberties Union of Kansas, or the ACLU. The ACLU has been one of the voices engaged in honing Wichita's proposed non-discrimination ordinance, which the City Council is currently engaging public feedback on.
Hey everyone, I'm Mayor Brandon Whipple, and welcome to today's show. I'm here with Kendall Seal. Kendall comes from us from really the American Civil Liberties Union of Kansas, and has an extensive background working in the area of civil rights. So Kendall, thank you for being here today.
Yeah, so happy to be here. Great name for a show.
Yeah, great. Yeah, thank you. We have to tell Megan that. So basically, we have been having this discussion about civil rights here in Wichita and trying to have Wichita become the 22nd city with a non-discriminatory ordinance that's enforceable at the local level. This is something that you have experience with your legal background and also your policy background. Can you tell us a little bit about these ordinances and frankly how they have been playing out in other cities here in Kansas?
Sure. I mean, you look at the template that was presented this week to City Council. It's the type of ordinance that's been in operation in Kansas since around 2014 in a range of different communities. They've not seen significant lawsuit increases, but I do think it's really important for the citizens of Wichita to think about public policy as an allocation of values for their community. And if this community believes in civil rights, believes in civil liberties and due process, then this is the kind of ordinance that everyday, Wichitans can back.
Excellent. So, and really, I think that it's been interesting this last year as mayor, where we talk about not just folks who are in the LGBTQ community, but also having a discussion on race relations, working with our population of veterans who have been homeless and are getting back on their feet and experiencing discrimination when it comes to housing, where they will go. I've heard stories of veterans who got back on their feet, are going to get a lease, and then the person says, well, because of their stereotypes of veterans, we just don't want to lease to you. So is these type of these issues in your work in Kansas, are they, do ordinances like this help prevent those type of situations, or are folks just, is there no real effect?
Right, I think it creates a norm. It sets an expectation in the community, and as members of the community, it's important, I think, to recognize that it's not just members of the community that this ordinance would be looking to protect. It'd also be looking to protect guests of Wichita. I mean, if Wichita wants to be a competitive city when it comes to business, if they want to be welcoming to a broad swath of society, I mean, you look at the categories that this ordinance would protect. In many ways, it mirrors state and federal law. There's a couple areas where it does not. And that's an opportunity, a lane for Wichita to lead in, much like some 20-plus Kansas communities are already leading in. So, I think when you look at these kinds of ordinances, it's protecting really everyone. Religion, it's protecting folks based on their religion. It's protecting veterans, like you mentioned. It's protecting based on race. It's protecting based on sexual orientation. And on the whole, I think most people. Actually don't think most people are bad people. I think most people want to do the right thing, and they don't always have the tools. They always know better. But when they know better, they tend to do better, and this conversation is about helping people know better.
So Kendall, what got you interested in this type of work? I know that we've been chatting before the show started, and I got to know you a little bit. But really, I think it'd be interesting to know just a little bit about not just your personal resume, but really what got you interested in this work and for helping people like me in elected positions to implement this type of change. Sure.
So I mean, really, kind of at every step of my career, I think I'm motivated by the idea of helping people take their next best step. And somewhere along the line, probably in college, I believe it was, that I first kind of recognized where a lot of folks, there were certain barriers keeping them from taking their next best step. And those were barriers in society. Those were barriers sometimes in business. And, but for those barriers, people could excel. They could be their best selves. They could bring their best selves to work. They could show up and be authentic in a community. And I think that's what the motivator for me is when I think about ordinances like this, that this is really about equal opportunity for everyone. And there will be people who can't manage to just respect other people and respect their civil rights and do the right thing. And there are always probably going to be those folks out there. But I think on the whole, most people want to do the right thing. But sometimes they need a structure. Sometimes they need guidance. And that's what these kinds of ordinances provide. Background for me, I was involved actively in a number of different things, whether it was women's equity and opportunity issues, gender pay issues. With the U.S. Commission, it was after Ferguson, individual civil rights and police interactions. Those are conversations happening not just in Wichita, but really across Kansas, across the country today. But at every one of these conversations, I think it's about building good relationships and focusing on those relationships before you go about undertaking a task. And I think Wichita is just such a welcoming place on the whole. I've had a great experience in Wichita. I've always felt welcome and included. I think most people do, but some people don't. And that's what this is about.
And I agree with you there, where I think Wichita, we have some of the best people in the world. I think that sometimes when you hear folks on social media or on the radio or on who make the news when it comes to leaders in politics, you're usually hearing, and if it's negative, you're usually hearing just a small sample of what Wichita really is. And frankly, in Kansas, sometimes it's always, you have a legislator who puts in a bill that turns out to be racist or turns out to be discriminatory. We all kind of know that bill will never see the light of day, but that happens to be the story. And I do think that in Wichita, we have an opportunity to talk about Wichita as a community standard of being a city that accepts everyone. Yeah. And because I think that's like what you said, I agree that's true. And Wichitans look out for our neighbors. That's one of our core values. And when it comes to, I guess, not just doing the right thing for our neighbors, ensuring that they have the same civil rights that and freedom and liberty that we do, and that's protected, or that I would say I do, because I'm someone who's never been discriminated against. That I know of. Now, can we also talk about a little bit economically? In your work, how does these NDOs affect the economy?
Yeah, I mean, you see some of the most successful businesses incorporating best practices when it comes to diversity, equity, and inclusion in the workplace. And really, this is a place where oftentimes government has been lagging behind the business sector. We see businesses responding to a climate where their consumers expect them to be diverse, inclusive, and equitable environments and hold them accountable in terms of the business that they do. And you've seen communities really across America. You've seen large companies, you've seen small companies moving in this direction for a while now. And there's, if anything, it's a benefit rather than, I know I've heard various people saying it's like negative business plans. I think business wants more certainty on process and expectation of what the values are in the community. And I think this ordinance provides that clarity about what those values are.
And just kind of build upon that, out of every the top 100 Fortune 500 companies on the Fortune 500 list, internally they all have similar NDOs, or policy that protects against discrimination. We had the vice president of Cargill show up at our council meeting and said this is needed for attracting and retaining talent. And we know from Wichita's Chung report that our highest export, sadly, is educated young people with other opportunities. People who could get the same opportunity in Wichita or in Des Moines, Iowa, and they choose Iowa or they choose Kansas City. And it's interesting when we talk to these business leaders and they talk about how in that group that is leaving, the overwhelming majority are women or folks who would fall into a protected class that this would cover. And to see Cargill, one of our largest employers, talk about that for retention, in your experience, in your body of work, has that shown to be true? Like, what have you guys learned when it comes to retention and attracting younger and talent?
Absolutely. So when you look at the Corporate Equality Index is one of the leading indicators nationally that looks at best practices in the workplace. And the most successful businesses are incorporating these policies, they're adopting them, they're not just doing the minimum, which is to say, like, right, I'm passing an ordinance, I'm doing this step. They're being proactive advocates in advocating and using their kind of pulpit as a business to say we need this across the country. Because again, it's communicating their values as a business to not only their employees, but also to the consumers who are buying their product, right? And that's really important to convey those values. And I think the communities and the businesses that aren't are really missing out because that's saying, I think, ultimately that they don't want to be competitive.
So when it comes to installing these community values, we have seen the economic impact where really discriminatory state level bills that become a law have had on other states in our country. In your research, when it comes to businesses that value, and we already mentioned most of the top employers do that, value diversity and want to have a more diverse workforce, are we at risk in Wichita, do you think, if we remain one of the last major cities in Kansas that doesn't have an NDO? Do you believe that in your research that might be negatively impacting our ability to attract and retain talent, but also businesses?
I'd be utterly shocked if they didn't take into account. Most businesses, I mean, whether you're talking about tourism and convention, whether you're talking about relocation, they want to know, like, can my employees come? Can I come to this community and feel like I can be here, I can thrive here, my kids can feel safe here? And those kinds of questions do factor in to the overall kind of evaluation of what businesses are doing, in addition to the bottom line. And in fact, in this environment, when we're talking about like retention of employees and recruitment of employees, I mean, so many people, you have Wichita State right here. Like, why do students leave Wichita? Why don't they want to stay here and keep working here? I think that's a big question that lots of communities are struggling with, but I think some communities are being more proactive than others.
It's interesting where Wichita State, I think they were ranked one of the top universities for students who are members of the LGBTQ community, and Wichita State now has their president is a member of the LGBTQ community. So it's interesting and for the first time in City Council, we have a council member who is also a member of the LGBTQ community. So it's interesting that we haven't got this done yet. It seems like the community values of inclusion, the community values of diversity, they're already here in Wichita, and we're seeing that. And then by putting an ordinance in to confirm that, to me, and I'm just, this might not be a question, but it just seems to me that we're there when it comes to our actions and behaviors and acceptance as a community. It's time to confirm it and to put this in place so that the rest of the world knows as well. And hopefully that would add to our ability to grow our economy and be a more welcoming place. Now, when it comes to really this NDO, we have had pushback against folks who are very concerned that this would have a negative effect on their ability to practice their religion. Can you talk to us a little bit about that? Because I'm sure that your policy experience, you guys have already faced some of this as well.
Yes, so I mean, there was a lot of discussion about that, a lot of anxiety and hand-wringing about it. And listening to the comments, it were almost as if they had not read the ordinance, actually. And what I mean by that is that explicit multiple times in this ordinance. It carves out religious organizations, churches, synagogues, temples, mosques. They're carved out. This does not apply, right? But what we saw and heard in the testimony was, I think, in many ways, a disinformation campaign. Mm-hmm. It was about creating chaos, confusion, delay, and it's also very predictable. I mean,
Are those common tactics?
Absolutely common tactic. This is a traditional playbook. Again, this ordinance has been in Kansas community since 2014. The litigation, all the fears, the sky is falling kind of rhetoric, it's not borne out in the real world. It's not borne out in the real world because that's not what the ordinance says. The ordinance says you have a right to practice your religion, that this doesn't apply to religious institutions. This does not impact you can't be forced to marry anyone, right? You can't, there's all kinds of just wild rhetoric that was really more political commentary than based in actuality.
And it makes me feel a little better that you say that's a common tactic, it's a playbook, because I, as mayor, really was taken off guard with the organization of a political push by some of these groups and how it was based off misinformation, where you can point out in black and white, and really when it comes to law making, when you write it down and put it in there, that's the best you can do as far as getting something done. Is we wrote it in black and white that religious organizations are protected against having to change their ways, and we still got a lot of people who didn't know that, it seemed like, who were told something else by those they trust. In other communities where this was an issue, what's the best way to usually combat that misinformation?
I mean, you have to speak the truth. As I was told, at least growing up, you have to speak the truth in love to folks who maybe unwillingly, but I do believe some may intentionally have created a frame around this conversation because they have other objectives that they try to deliver on, and they try to use these conversations. It's really a tactic of exploitation, to be clear. I mean, this reflects also kind of what more abusive personalities do, right? They try to disorient and confuse and create the kind of conversation that gets people off the substantive matter, and that's what I saw on display there.
Interesting. Well, Mr. Seal, we really appreciate you being here. Appreciate not only you coming in and being on the show, but also being at our meeting, coming down and being willing to speak about this ordinance and using your legal expertise to let us know, what you and the organization you represent felt about our ordinance. And thank you for being on and helping us better understand really what our choice would be on October 12th. So we have an opportunity. This was tabled for at least 90 days, in my opinion, sadly. But we have an opportunity to hopefully take a second look at it and possibly make more people feel more comfortable with what we're actually doing and make that divide between what people, I think, fear might be happening versus what's actually happening. So appreciate you and your organization being willing to work with us through this, and you being on the show today.
Absolutely. I mean, that's what we're here for. I mean, we're protecting, strengthening civil rights for Kansans. We believe that the residents of Wichita want this, need this, and that political leaders will deliver on it.
Well, thank you. We appreciate that.
You bet.
All right, Mayor. So we ask the community to share questions every single month, and there's a couple that always come up that get asked, and mainly it's about streets and street sweepers and then homeless services. Those are our most commonly occurring questions. So I just wanted to go over a couple of the ways that people can engage and get more information. Obviously, our website, wichita.gov, is a great resource. You can go there to check when the street sweepers are going to be in your neighborhood, see when road construction is happening. We also have a section under housing to look at all the ways we can help our unhoused neighbors. And it also touches on some of the things that we have done throughout the last year, such as the 316 project, rental assistance. So for those questions.
Yeah, just another thing for folks who are watching. If you need help on finding some of this information, tag the City of Wichita and our social media platforms on Twitter and on Facebook. And a lot of times we can get the links out to people as well.
Yeah.
So some of this information, you're right, I get a lot of these questions when I'm out and about, but we to get the most up-to-date information, it's really good to show people where that's being updated on our websites.
Yeah, so we always encourage people to go there, but those are some of our most commonly asked questions. Another common question we receive is about transit, and if there's currently plans to extend transit services.
Yeah, really good question, and this is something that I've heard for quite a while when it comes to not just for before I was elected, but while being mayor. Basically, our transportation system here is supplementary. It's not, it really can't be used in place of a car at this time. And some of the stuff we're trying to do is get better feedback on what routes people would need, particularly if we were to expand these past 6 o'clock. We've been working with our business leaders who have third shift employees to figure out where the majority of those employees, the zip codes might be. So could we make an extra route that would allow, for at least some of the folks who are depending on public transportation for work, getting to and from work. But also, when it comes to transportation, we do have a lot of work to do on it. And I look forward to taking that on in the next few years because it's something that comes up quite a bit.
Yeah, it's and some people in our community can't drive. We have a large population of individuals who are visually impaired, and we always work with them with our paratransit services. And you can contact Wichita Transit directly if you can't drive, and get in touch to get those services. So we're always pushing people for that.
Yeah, and another thing about expanding transportation, we're making a push this budget cycle to offer at least $50 an hour as the base pay for folks who work for the city. And one of the things that should do is up the base pay for bus drivers. If we want to expand more routes, we need more bus drivers so we can get more buses out there on the roads. And right now we're losing bus drivers to the private sector, really because our pay hasn't been competitive. So the council right now, at this point, of course, nothing's done until it's voted on, are looking towards increasing that base pay so we can be more competitive, we can hang on to more bus drivers, and we get more buses out there on the routes.
Yeah, definitely. Even during the pandemic, when we had to cut jobs, one thing we were always hiring for was bus drivers. There's just such a need. That's a great point.
You should put a plug in, by the way. We're looking for bus drivers. If anyone has a commercial driver's license or wants to, we'll actually have a program where we'll train people to get your commercial driver's license.
Yeah. Great plug. So another question that we keep hearing is about the blue or purple lights in town. And, people aren't sure who manages those lights, but that is our partner with Evergy, and I know they're working on it. I don't know if you've had any conversations with them about their work to
I have not actually, so I'm not sure. I will say I'm not in charge of the lights, or else I'd probably be a little more funny with them, do different stuff with them. However, that falls to, I believe, Evergy, as you said, and they usually work the administrative side of our government. So can't really answer too many questions about that, but luckily we got good staff who probably can.
Yeah, I know that it's a glitch in their system, and they're aware of it, and they're trying to address it. But
this might be one of those things that they're protecting me from, by the way, where we might have like a renegade blinking light somewhere, and they just make sure the email doesn't get to the mayor. So I'm glad you guys are on top of it.
Exactly.
But I haven't heard too much about it on my end.
Right. And finally, so we've had several big issues come before council this year. It's been, I think you were saying the other day, we've never had more entertaining council meetings and had more people tuning in, which is great to get people involved. But there's lots of ways that people can weigh in outside of attending those meetings. What are some of the ways that you and the council like to receive feedback on big issues?
Right, and you put a positive spin to I think my wife's quote, where she would say, regardless of all the negative emails you get, what people say, you at least made local government interesting. And the reality is, we got to take Wichita off what I call autopilot. This is a new decade. We're in a new post-COVID world, and we have a choice that we can make. Are we going to bring Wichita up to that regional leader that we once were? And in doing so, we have to modernize some of our policies. Some of it we could do it in-house, such as passing a non-discriminatory ordinance, which would expand economic opportunities, or update our ethics policy, which is something I tackled earlier this year. So we want public feedback because not only in these bigger changes, so that everyone has accurate information, but also what should we be doing next? When we get feedback from the public about a problem, I actually like problems because it gives me something to fix, gives me something to solve. So when we get feedback from particular problems, then we can address it quicker. Best way to reach out to me is usually through social media. Emails too, but sometimes it takes a little longer for me to get through all my emails. So best reach out to me is through social media.
Awesome. Well, that's all we have today. Thank you so much.
Thanks a lot. Thanks for watching this episode of What's Up Wichita. Be sure to reach out to me on social media or by email at bwhipple@wichita.gov. If you want to ask a question for next month's show, please send a short video to social@wichita.gov and we'll play it on the episode. Again, thanks for joining.